It was a shocker when the New Orleans Saints announced that Tyrann Mathieu would be retiring from the NFL, and now it's the young safeties who are under the microscope. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, the table and rotation are set for the quarterback battle. The New Orleans Saints tight end room just suddenly got a lot less crowded out of nowhere. We're going to kick everything off with the biggest story of the day. Safety Tyron Mathieu announces his retirement, and now it's the young safeties who are going to be charged with leading the way. We got all that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take your wealth into your own hands by heading over to monarchmoney.com and using promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get 50% off your first year. The New Orleans Saints star safety Tyrann Mathieu has announced his retirement, and now every eye seems to be turning to rookie third-round safety Jonas Sanker and third-year safety Jordan Howden to figure out who's going to lead the way at the position next to veteran and recently acquired safety Justin Reid. Let's start off with the implications of the retirement. A lot of people want to know what's going to happen with the cap and all this. $1.53 million is saved this year, and about $2.5 million comes off the books next year in 2026 when it comes to his dead cap. That's it. That's the savings. It's not a huge amount of savings. Remember, Tyrann Mathieu already redid his contract earlier in the offseason, added a bunch of incentives for playing time and all those other things. And so a lot of the money on his deal was already saved at an earlier point in the offseason. Now, the next thing becomes, in terms of implications, who takes his role on the field and what exactly might his role have been in Brandon Staley's defense? Well, it was going to be a versatile role, right? Not just covering, but also playing down in the box, manning the run, probably lining up on the line of scrimmage every now and then to rush the passer, all of those pieces. And so you've got to find somebody that has that sort of multiple nature to their game. And so you're looking at young guys like Jordan Howden, as well as Jonas Sanker, the rookie from this year, drafted in the third round out of Virginia, who is extremely versatile and has a lot of flexibility to his game. Terrell Burgess, somebody that already has some familiarity with Brandon Staley and also has some flexibility to his game. Ugo Amadi as well. JT Gray, a longstanding veteran who has seen more as a special teams asset than a defensive asset. And then, of course, Elliott Davison, who was brought in this offseason from UTSA as an undrafted free agent. So the Saints have still a lot of options in terms of who's going to compete to line up next to Justin Reid. But the one thing that none of those guys will be able to replace is perhaps the thing that made Tyrann Mathieu so special, and that's the leadership. Remember, Tyrann Mathieu is the guy partway through the season a couple years ago that got up in front of the team and talked about how they needed how the turnaround for this team needs to start with the defense. And in particular, it's got to start with the secondary. Challenge the secondary before they went out up against Tampa Bay Buccaneers and got like 4+ interceptions in that game, 3+ takeaways in that game. And he was the guy that after Dennis Allen was canned last year, he was the guy that was like, put it all on me. I'm the one, and all this other stuff. He's talked with our good friend Brooke Kirchhoffer, sportscaster and sports broadcaster, this offseason, right around Super Bowl week, about how he thought he still had another 2 or 3 years of high standard, high quality, up to his standard type football left to play. And so certainly something has changed. We spoke with general manager Mickey Loomis as well as head coach Kellen Moore on Tuesday, and both of them indicated that the decision about Tyrann Mathieu's retirement really kind of escalated over the course of the last couple of days. And so I think that with all of these pieces, there's a lot here to figure out in terms of, or not really a lot to figure out, but it kind of pushed things a little bit further. Like, clearly something changed for Tyrann Mathieu over the course of this offseason. So with that being the case, the next thing that you're looking at is a real opportunity here for some of these young players to come in and stand in, at least on the field. But replacing Tyron Mathieu as a leader and his leadership, that's going to be a very challenging thing for this defense. But it does thrust this team even further into rebuild conversation, transition year conversation. I mean, even Mickey Loomis like really kind of lightened up on the idea of like, yeah, like we understand this is a transition year kind of language and everything during his presser. And so I think the reality is setting in around a lot of this that, hey, it's okay to have good aspirations and high aspirations, but that won't always equate to the expectations, right? And so seeing exactly where things go for this team over the course of this year with Tyron Mathieu's retirement probably just got a little bit more kind of digestible in terms of the full spectrum of things that could be possible for this team. And so for New Orleans, they now have to figure out who's going to be that safety that steps in. I think I would advocate new defense, new defensive leaders along the way to roll with the new defensive assets that this coaching staff chose, and that's Justin Reid and Jonas Sanker. I believe that Jordan Howden's a very talented safety, but I don't know if he has the versatility that Jonas Sanker has, who played over like 500, over 250 snaps at slot, in the box, and, you know, as a deep safety over the course of his career at Virginia. And so just that level of versatility feels so tailor-made for what it is that Brandon Staley wants to do with his defense, disguise, being able to kind of start in one coverage, but then transition into a different look after the snap, all those other pieces. I think Jonas Sanker just fits that so incredibly well. The Saints can also, should they decide, go to the free agency market to figure this out as well. They could go after another veteran like Julian Blackmon. Hi, it's Ross, coming at you from the future. Turns out that Julian Blackmon thing that I kind of threw off to the side there was exactly right. Sounds like the New Orleans Saints are signing Julian Blackmon. So as a part of that, we'll definitely come back and take a look at what Julian Blackmon brings to this team going into tomorrow's episode after we see him on the first day of camp. I literally said the name because it's a player that I liked, but didn't think that the Saints would get him, but they did. So we'll break it down tomorrow. Until then, back to your regularly scheduled episode. I think that in between guys like Jonas Sanker and Jordan Howden at the headline, but then also Terrell Burgess, Ugo Amadi, JT Gray, Elliot Davison, like the Saints still have a lot of players to cycle in next to Justin Reid to figure out who's going to be the starter. But if I had to pick a starter today and I'm trying to like read a crystal ball or whatever, I'm probably leaning towards Jonas Sanker. He was a draft pick by one of the first defensive picks by this new coaching staff, and he was drafted this year. He has the versatility. He checks all the boxes. He has the takeaway ability. He has the leadership ability as well. Like, he might not step into a Tyrann Mathieu, Honey Badger sized leadership role right away, but he has leadership at his core, both from his home and also on the field. I think that he just makes a lot of sense. So we'll see. It could be Jonas Sanker time in New Orleans, but I'll tell you what, man, the Honey Badger will absolutely be missed in that locker room. Was always great to talk to, and he will certainly be missed on the field. And aren't we lucky, those of us that had the opportunity to watch him from St. Aug to LSU to his NFL career and then finishing up appropriately back in his hometown and his home city of New Orleans. What a beautiful story I'm still going to say young man because I'm a young man and he's a young man too. So dang it, great stuff for the young man. So really, really excited to see where things go for Tyrann Mathieu. He's got a bright future ahead of him. Should he decide to go into broadcasting, coaching, maybe even going to LSU to do stuff like that? Like, he's done a lot of those, speaking engagements and everything. Just what an incredible person. And so really, really exciting to see where things go for him next, but certainly is going to be somebody that's going to be missed by this team on the football field. Coming up next, he wasn't the only player that retired today. 2 Saints-related tight ends also retired, and 2 more are starting on the physically unable to perform list. Let's break it all down as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends over at Monarch Money. Ever wish that managing your money was a little bit easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it certainly can be, and I can guarantee that it is. At least that was my experience. I was having a lot of trouble juggling a bunch of different apps. I had an investment app, I had an accounts app, I had a budgeting app, I had a finances app, I had all this other stuff That was allowing me to track my accounts, right? There was that part too, like the banking app. Oh gosh, there's just so much all in one thing. And then I found the Monarch Money app, which put a whole bunch of that stuff all in one place. So that I've gone from having like 5 or 6 apps to like 2 apps, right? And so I absolutely love what Monarch Money can do and the way that it helps you, even share your finances with other people. If you're managing a business or personal finances with others, that makes that super easy. Just gets rid of all the stress around taking control of your finances, which you can do today with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at Rougiette. Maybe you've heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them out, but now it's time for something beyond the pill. So let me introduce you to Rougiette Ready. We're talking about a next-gen prescription treatment, 3-in-1 formula that dissolves under the tongue, kicks in within 15 minutes, and effects can last up to 36 hours, increasing blood flow, arousal in the brain, all this other stuff to making sure that you're confident and ready when the moment arises. Just head over to rougiette.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL. Use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved, nor do they undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit Rougiette website for full safety information. All right, family. If you thought Tyron Mathieu was the only retirement on Tuesday, well, surprise, there was another, technically 2 other, 1 Saints adjacent and 1 Saints player, another surprise retirement on Tuesday. So let me tell you everything's going on around the tight end position, because I got to tell you what, you talk about Jonas Sanker's opportunity ahead of him. Well, 7th round pick, Moliki Matavao, massive opportunity now ahead of him because, well, first of all, Jimmy Graham announced his retirement. That doesn't affect the Saints, but that's just, he's going to retire as a Saint because that was the last team he was with, the Hall of Fame career, all this stuff, like incredible human. So awesome, and really excited for him. He just did the Arctic Challenge going across the Arctic Ocean in a team of 4 rowers. Like, how incredible is that? They did it in record-breaking time, all of this stuff. So shout out to Jimmy Graham. But the 3 things that happened that immediately impact the Saints tight end room on Tuesday is that 2 players will start off and physically unable to perform. That's not a surprise. In terms of training camp, Taysom Hill, Foster Moreau, no surprise there. Both those guys recovering from late season injuries. Taysom Hill had his knee injury, torn ACL, all that good stuff, had a surgery, all that. That happened December 1st. And then there was another leg injury to Moreau, who had offseason surgery as well. His injury happened in January. It was going to be a shock if either of those guys saw the field early on in training camp. I get the sneaking suspicion that Foster Moreau might be the first one back, with Taysom Hill taking a little bit longer, but we'll see how things go. We won't speculate too much on that. But those 2 guys will not be ready to start for training camp. The other news at the tight end position is that Dallin Holker was waived, and come to find out after a whole bunch of conversation with his lovely family, all the people around him, he's got a great support system around him. He's decided to retire from the game of football as well. He had been dealing with kind of this ankle injury that felt like it had been lingering. We got back to OTAs and everything this past summer, and he had a boot on again and all this stuff. So I don't know if the injuries really kind of led to this. I don't want to speculate about another person's like life decision or anything like that. That would just be improper and rude. But it is interesting just to kind of like put those pieces together and then see this happen. And for all intents and purposes, I hope the best for Dallin Holker as he continues forward, what his endeavors are going to be as he moves ahead and everything. But now what this does is that this kind of frees up a little bit of the logjam that was happening at the tight end position. Foster Moreau is going to take some time. Taysom Hill is going to take some time. So now the Saints have gone from having like 10 tight ends in the room, 9 tight ends in the room, to having 2 guys on physically unable to perform. And then they've got Juwan Johnson at the top of their depth chart. There's no shock there. They've got Jack Stoll, who's right there as well, coming over from the Philadelphia Eagles as an offseason acquisition. Then you get to a couple of familiar faces in Trayton Welch as well as Michael Jacobson, who have been around in Trayton Welch's case a year on the practice squad, in Michael Jacobson's case multiple years on the practice squad. Seth Green, no, not that one, but the one from the UFL. who was this quarterback turned wildcat wide receiver turned tight end in the UFL, who signed with the Saints this offseason. And then, of course, Moliki Matavao. And all of a sudden, there's this opportunity right here to where, like, we did a show about Matavao not too long ago about him having kind of the toughest path to the roster. Very talented player, led UCLA in receptions and receiving yards last year with over 500 and a really, really bad UCLA offense with very let's call it under par quarterback play. And then was an awesome blocker already before that, which is usually the thing that creates the most or the tallest hurdle for a lot of young tight ends that are transitioning to the NFL game. But so he's got all this stuff going for him in terms of talent, and he's got great size at 6'6", 250, 240 something pounds. And then now the runway's there for him in a way that it wasn't before, when Dallin Holker was still a part of the conversation, when the Saints weren't going to go into training camp with, 4 tight ends not available for them, or 3 tight ends not available for them. I keep lumping Jimmy Graham into the equation. He's not a part of the equation. But 3 other tight ends that were going to potentially be available for them at some time. And also, so like right now is the time when Matavao hits that field, number 80, coming out of UCLA, the big body tight end on Wednesday. Every opportunity is available in front of him. And he gets to do it in front of fans, which is super fun and everything too. But now him, Juwan Johnson, and Jack Stoll kind of become, could they become the top 3 tight ends? What happens with Michael Jacobson? Can he go from being a camp performer to, a guy that makes the active roster? What does Trayton Welch look like as he, fits into this system? What does Seth Green look like as he moves back into the NFL? Like, all of a sudden there's all these other question marks, but now, like, there's a pathway. Because if you think about it, there's a chance that Foster Moreau starts on the season on the 53-man roster, but isn't actually ready to play right away, right? Like, might not be ready to play week 1. And so then that still opens up an opportunity for that another tight end to kind of get involved along with Juwan Johnson and Jack Stoll. And I think that with this new offensive system that's going to be built around the run game and have a lot going for it in terms of its run game, having guys that can go out there and block for you and catch for you, but more importantly, be a blocker for you, Matavao checks the box. And so this all of a sudden puts him very much under the microscope, or really rather in focus, right? Like, there should be excitement around him right now, even though he's coming in as a 7th round draft pick and kind of looked like the guy that was going to have the toughest path to his position. But now with, Moreau out to start training camp, Hill out to start training camp, Dallin Holker out and retired, and a lot of unproven guys behind the 2 proven guys, there's a real chance here for Matavao to shoot up and all of a sudden surprise. And so really, really intrigued and interested to see what it is that young man's going to be able to do with his newfound opportunity. All of a sudden, the Saints are a young team, and all these young players, these rookie players, are getting their opportunities to go in there and have a real, chance to get everything started. So this is awesome. Like, this is what you want to see from this New Orleans Saints team. Trending younger, getting younger, all that. Sometimes it happens out of necessity. Sometimes it happens for choice. It's a unique blend of both for New Orleans right now. But I think all for the best for the New Orleans Saints at the moment. So Moliki Matavao, definitely one to watch as training camp starts up later on today. All right. Coming up next, we're going to wrap everything up, take a look at the quarterback battle. The stage is set, and so is the rotation for what we expect to see. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. It's time to fire up the group chat, get the trash talk started, build the draft board, get out there and get ready for everything that you know and love about fantasy football. It's all going down at Yahoo Fantasy. All the best are playing Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or you're a veteran making your millionth league, everything down to the super user-friendly app. I'm big on UI these days as I get older and older. And then, of course, the chat rooms and the message boards, transactions, all the stuff that you can manage on there. I love the Yahoo Fantasy app. And to celebrate the 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy will be dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. And it all begins August 4th. So stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints quarterback battle ground stage is set, and so is the rotation. And I cannot wait for this quarterback battle to finally get underway today as the Saints kick off training camp. So look, this is what we know about the New Orleans Saints roster battle, or rather quarterback battle, based on what head coach Kellen Moore explained to us. That there will be a rotation, just as we expected, basically leading up to the Chargers game, which is roughly, forgive me, 13 or 14 practices. 11 here in New Orleans, and then a few, or in Metairie, and then a few in Irvine before getting started up against the Chargers in LA. So for New Orleans, what the Saints plan to do is a little bit different than what they did during OTAs and minicamp. And let me be very clear, because the Saints were today too, or Tuesday, that it's not just Tyler Shough and Spencer Rattler in the conversation, although we do believe that the overall conversation will be focused on Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shough. The Saints remain adamant that Jake Haener is a part of this quarterback battle. So you're going to hear me talk about 3 quarterbacks. So I'm going to pay the respect to what it is that the Saints are saying, but I think we know very much this conversation is between 2 quarterbacks and Rattler and Shough. So here's the plan with the Saints. The rotation, just as we expected, will be there for these players, but they're going to handle it a little bit differently than they did during OTAs and minicamps. During OTAs and minicamps, I remind you, we saw a lot of all in the same day when they would go and do their first session of 7-on-7s. Spencer Rattler got first team, Tyler Shough got second team. Then when they did their second set of 7-on-7s during the same practice day, Tyler Shough got first team and Spencer Rattler got second team. So they did rotations within practices, and everything kind of evened out. Each of them had 59 passing attempts, 60 dropbacks all throughout those 7-on-7s and 9-on-7 drills that they did during OTAs and minicamps. But now going to training camp, here's what you should expect to see. Daily rotations sounds a little bit more like what it is that Kellen Moore is going for. So you might see, Jake Haener's got seniority, right? If he's really a part of this quarterback competition, he should be the one to get the first. He wouldn't be surprised to see him get the first team reps on the first day, because he's the senior guy. He's got 3 years. And so if he got first team reps to start on Wednesday, today, then he would get all the first team reps for that practice. And then the next day, your next guy would get all first team reps for that practice. And then the third day, the third guy would get all first team reps. And then we go back to the first guy after that. Yes, Hunter Dekkers is on the roster, but Hunter Dekkers is probably going to be batting a little bit of cleanup more than likely, as opposed to actually being a part of this conversation. Now, there were 3 things that Kellen Moore said that I think are really important. The first of which is that he acknowledged that this quarterback battle can solve itself soon, or it can take a little bit of time, but it's important to have patience. I think that is a very pragmatic way to look at this. That, yeah, there's a chance that somebody blows the doors off of this competition right away, but good to have some patience. So it's kind of interesting that everything's kind of leading up, like all the conversation was leading up to the Chargers game, leading up to the Chargers game, leading up to the Chargers game, which tells me that the Chargers game is going to kind of illuminate, right? Brighten, shine a light on a good bit of context around where this quarterback battle might be going. So I think that Chargers game becomes really, really important. I think you're going to see a lot of snaps for Spencer Rattler. You're going to see a lot of snaps for Tyler Shough during that Chargers game. The second thing that he said was, and I thought this was important, that he's not going to overreact when a quarterback throws interceptions. He's expecting his quarterbacks to throw interceptions, and that he's not going to overreact to them. Others will overreact, right? Oh, threw interception in training camp, trash quarterback, never going to make it in the NFL. You're going to see those kinds of takes. Don't worry about it. The fact of the matter is, it's not about, and we say this all the time on the show, especially during training camp, if this is your first training camp here on the show, it's not what you do first, or it's not what you do wrong, it's what you do next. And so how do you respond to the adversity? That's going to be a big part of the criteria for these quarterbacks, right? Short memory, all those other things. The third thing that he said that I thought was very important is that not every player is going to get the same amount of reps. And he even capped it off with a quick aside where he said, sometimes life isn't fair. And so the reason why I think that that's important is because not all the quarterbacks deserve the same amount of reps when it comes to this conversation of who's going to be the starting quarterback. Eventually, someone will pull away, and that player deserves more reps. One of the other things that Kellen Moore said was that there is value when a player has the opportunity to have consistency built around them, because that's going to be the quarterback. And so the idea of the quarterback situation solving itself early is not a bad thing, because it would create more of that opportunity. So just another thing to kind of keep in mind. But I think that that's important. Like, I would not be surprised to see one of Tyler Shough and Spencer Rattler having the most reps or the most attempts in practice by the time they get to that Chargers game. The other one has the second most. Jake Haener has the third most. And then Hunter Deckers gets some opportunities here and there. And so I think that that's what we're going to see amidst this entire thing. It's important. I think that the pragmatism and the reality and the realism with which Kellen Moore is showing that he's approaching this quarterback battle is really important, because you can't have a quarterback battle and exist in a fairy tale land. You have to be pragmatic. You have to be realistic. And I love the very actualized approach that Kellen Moore has taken to this deal. And it will very much be, with some input, it will very much be Kellen Moore's decision who ends up being the starting quarterback for this New Orleans Saints team as they kick off week 1 in 2025 in September. All right. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, we get to talk about actual football that happened on an actual football field. And I'm so excited to get to it. Recapping the first day of training camp in tomorrow's show. Do not miss it. We'll be right here for you. We appreciate you very much as always, making us your first listen and making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know what the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation, I'll holla at you.